Hi, welcome to Footlights.com. I'm John McGivern. You're on our front page. Thanks a lot for clicking in. September 2nd, I opened a show at the Market Center of the Performing Arts. It's a show called The Wonder Bread Years. I brought it back from last year. The writer of that show is a man named Pat Hazel. You may know him as one of the writers from Seinfeld. You may know him from The Tonight Show, from any of the late-night comedy specials on cable. It's Pat Hazel. He's here to talk to us today on Footlights.com. Let's talk a little bit about Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure people want to hear about it. You were in the front door of that place when it first got started.
Yeah, I was just at a lucky place, I guess. I had toured as an opening act for Jerry, and I had written that first play, The Bunk Bed Brothers, which was my writing sample I sent to Castle Rock. And Jerry tapped me to be one of the first couple of writers. So I did not work on the pilot, but I came along right after that. And at the time, the show was called The Seinfeld Chronicles. But because something called The Martian Chronicles came out, they go, well, we can't have Chronicles, well, it's just... And nobody knew what it was. And my own mom would say, now, what is this, Steinfeld and Son, or Sanford and Son? I go, no, Mom, it's a comedian. His name's Jerry Seinfeld. But after the Gulf War, after it moved its position and it found its home and it followed Cheers, and Cheers was going off the air and they created this must-see TV energy, it really became of its time. It was one of the sitcoms that there was a lot of family sitcoms on at the time, like Family Ties and things. And this was the first one where your friends were your family, where everybody, which is realistic now in today's contemporary society. So people could relate to having a scavenging neighbor who would come in and just borrow stuff or take stuff and that kind of a thing. And it was really fun to be a part of that. And also Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld often would say to me, let's just sink our own ship. Let's just entertain ourselves. Let's pretend we're the viewer. What would make us laugh? And we were all very much into writing stories that happened to us in some fashion. A lot of those stories happened to Larry David. And by now people know he's George was basically a Larry David person. So anytime at lunch, Larry would say, I don't feel confident in tan pants. We go, there's a George story, Yeah. So amazingly, some of those things, even like the contest and things, were things that Larry was having a bet with his friends in New York that they wouldn't, touch themselves inappropriately. Right. And we talked about it early, and then it wasn't until a few years later when storylines were getting thin, it was like, hey, how about that contest you had? Let's write about that, So it was great fun, and I always felt, Jerry jokingly said that I was protected under the Seinfeld umbrella, which was his faux insurance company for me, because I had the opportunity as a writer, and then I was the studio audience warm-up comedian for some 75 episodes, and I would tour with him occasionally as an opening act, and ghost wrote some American Express commercials and things like that. And it's kind of like being in the sidecar of success. You get to see, the product of fame and all those kinds of things, and at the same time you're contributing to what happens for that person. So you get to test your sense of humor and your ability to write, and
not a bad place to be.
It's really nice. It really was. I learned a lot, and when I did get when NBC came to me and said, hey, you want to create your own sitcom, all those lessons finally took the intimidation away, and occasionally I called to Jerry like, I think they want to cancel my show. He'd go, don't worry about it. They say that every week, So it's like, oh, good. I'm just another guy getting canceled.
What's the next? I know you have a production company, Sweetwood Productions.
Sweetwood Productions is my production company, so we represent the national tours of a number of shows. Some of them were shows that I wrote and produced. Others are producers who don't have an inroad to theatrical places. And my next personal creation for that is I wrote a play called Grounded for Life a number of years ago. And it was kind of a charming, funny play that ran in L.A. And recently, in combining with a composer in New York, we are converting it into a musical. So
okay, he's writing a musical, which I know him, you don't. The fact that he's writing a musical, he says he sits on airplanes listening to Pippin. Yeah. Listening to that's a little whorehouse in Texas, and people are like, oh, who's the big gay guy next to me?
I know, seriously. And what's funny is my own wife, everyone is like, are you sure you're writing a musical? I mean, the truth is I'm not writing the music. But I still have to understand the construction of a musical, right? I'm writing the book, and it's very, because I write comedy, I don't naturally want to go, no, it's going to break into a song. Like, there's no moment that the emotions, any of my characters,
please, just once, do that for me.
Sing and dance, like, whoa! So, and then why would they sing so much that they suddenly need to dance? I can't figure that part out. But Larry Goldberg, who I'm collaborating with in New York, has worked on The Drowsy Chaperone and lots of other shows. He conducts and accompanies things for Phantom of the Opera and Sunset Boulevard and all these shows. And every year
he knows the stuff.
He really knows.
Yeah.
He knows Broadway musicals. He understands the genre and all that. And for 3 years running, I'd come to New York. He'd see one of my shows. He goes, "When are you going to write a musical?" I go, "Larry, I don't write a musical. I can't. It's like writing a mass in Latin. It's not going to suddenly come to me." So after a number of things happening, I picked this play back up, and I said, "How can I make this different from the other plays?" And it's like, Larry is chomping at the bit to write a musical. I will send him this and see if he feels it warrants it. And it's a farce. I mean, the title Grounded for Life is about what if a guy was actually grounded for life and he was there at 35 or 40 years old? How would he survive in his room? You know, it's like Hogan's Heroes. His friends have tunneled in through the toy box, and all the scenes take place in this one room. So, you know, he actually thought, because it was absurd, that it's perfectly fine for somebody to break into song or do right. Yeah. So, and we have some very nutty things that happen in it. And this guy actually gets visited by Death, and Death has a big song about how you got to get out of this room and you got to live a little. Like, Death can't even take him yet until he goes, because he, you know, in Jimmy Stewart's Wonderful Life, when they look back at his life, it's like, oh, look how everything would have changed if you would have done this other thing. Mm-hmm. So when they look back at this guy, he's like, well, show me the past. And he goes, this is the past. You've never left this room. You've made no impact on the world.
You're living the past.
Yeah. He's like, well, take me to the next thing. There is no other thing. That's like, you're wasting my time here. You know? So it's a very funny kind of twisty thing. And,
how long before that gets up, do you think?
You know, I think that's about 8 months, maybe a year away. I mean, we're in the midst of, we wrote 3 or 4 songs last time I was in New York, and they're very amusing, you know. The Grounded for Life theme song is a sort of an anthem to all the people in the town and how the grounding happened and what the guy's been doing while he's been in prison.
Is it hummable?
Not yet. Okay. Not by me.
I can't wait.
First of all, I'm tone deaf, so this is a tone deaf musical is really not a good way to sell it.
That's good. We're really thrilled that you came to Milwaukee. We're really thrilled you talked to us. If you had a minute to talk about Milwaukee and your impressions of this city, what would you say?
Well, first of all, I'm wildly impressed by its uniqueness. And everything seems to be dedicated by some beer company. It's like shoelaces by a beer company, anything by a beer. Hey, let's go to the stadium. It's a beer company, which I guess I understand because I travel a lot. Mm-hmm. Every town I go to has its thing. But, you know, everything, it's interesting to be in the area and have the sausage and have the cheese and have the custard and feel and live it the way people do because they're so proud. And, you know, I really like to find parts of the country where I haven't experienced the local tastes and sounds and so forth. And, you know, I'm happy to come back, and I really have enjoyed the experience with watching the audience come to the show and watching your interpretation of the material because it makes me feel further that we all have something in common. Universally, all Americans, all people, you know, it's rewarding to find out that this little piece kind of bites away at people saying, oh, we're all different and we don't have that much in common. So, I mean, I'm really thrilled that Milwaukee has embraced it as they have and that you've enjoyed doing it so much.
I love it. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's Pat Hazel. My name's John McGivern. This is footlights.com. Thanks a lot for clicking on, and you'll see me next time.